Hi, Clutter Fairy fans. This is the Clutter Fairy Weekly for May 28th, 2024. I'm your co-host, Ed Gumnick, and I'm speaking with Gayle Goddard, certified professional organizer and owner of the Clutter Fairy in Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. The Clutter Fairy Weekly is the webcast and podcast that digs deep into the clutter that piles up between you and the life that you want to be living. We explore the habits and behaviors that lead to clutter, and we suggest strategies to slow the accumulation, reduce the collection, and comfortably manage the stuff we decide to keep.
If you're new to our Zoom meeting, we want to let you know that you can share your comments and questions via the chat, and I'll try to make sure Gayle addresses them before we move on to another topic. You can also use the raise hand feature if you'd like to ask a question or make a comment yourself via audio or video. And we are streaming the webcast live on Facebook, so you can share your questions and comments there, and I'll relay them to Gayle. We're going to start by talking about last week's Weekly Tittle, which was called Slice Through the Knot. The assignment was to take a bold stroke at finding a new and creative solution to your hardest puzzle. Let's hear from our participants in Zoom and on Facebook who untangled or slashed their personal Gordian knot this week. Please let us know in the comments. Viewer Dawn shared her tittle report in an email. Dawn writes, "My big knot I keep getting strangled by is all of the incoming," she puts that in quotation marks, "that tends to mount in my office. I'm fine with other incoming categories, groceries, other stores, because it's easier to handle. The minor culprit is anything DH doesn't know what to do with and doesn't feel like addressing. A week or so ago, he put boxes of COVID-related masks on my desk because they were in his dresser. So I put them in the linen closet, which will be due for a refresh soon. The major culprit, though, is a rainbow of papers and other items. I'm writing down each category and determining a next step for each category. The heart of the knot, as I think about it, is that without a next step, it just leads to piles of things I never seem to get all the way through. To give a few examples, 1, scrapbooking embellishments from particular events will go in a clear plastic bag with the date and the name and the event, so the photos can go in there too later. Number 2, items that trigger, I need to look that up on the internet, such as some mini cookies I've never heard of and want to see if they're available near me. These will go in a computer work tray. 3, items that spark, I need to make a phone call about this, file folder designated for phone calls. 4, lots of other paper things which need action before I'm done with it. Thanks for bringing this up. It has been helpful to me to start working through this.
Really appreciate that you sent us such a thorough explanation of how you were working through the tittle for yourself. Paper is absolutely one of those things that creates a whole host of different actions that are required to be managed with different systems. And so you're totally catching on with that. And as you come up with a category of stuff, you're thinking about what to do with it and how to handle it, where to park it. And that's exactly the process that you need to be doing. So good on you. You did a great job. You're doing a great job. And you're identifying that you have more than one reason why you keep paper or paper related items. And therefore you're going to have to work through all of those categories in your head and figure out what the parking solution is for all of them. So you're 4 items in or 3 items in, and you have more to go. So keep going for it and come back and tell us how it works out. But you truly embrace the concept of, I need to think about each thing that I'm saving and whether there's a system to manage it, and you're working your way through. So we'll look forward to hearing more about it. Thanks, Don.
Well, and that was one of our suggestions for dealing with your Gordian knot was break it down into smaller pieces. So that's really the approach that Dawn has taken.
Absolutely.
What do you think about the minor culprit? That
Oh,
her desk becomes the repository for stuff her husband doesn't know what to do with and doesn't feel like addressing.
Yeah, that's like not a surprise to me that sometimes the way that we deal with it is that we say, this is not my problem, and we give it to the other person in the house. And I think that requires a little bit of negotiation. I think the default of stuff it in my office for my wife to deal with it is not a very supportive solution.
It is suboptimal.
It is suboptimal, yes. And it doesn't respect her time and space either. Like he's mucking up, he's taking his clutter problem and putting it in her office to manage without explanation or discussion. Like, here, just deal with this. And so he's copping out and taking the easy route for him, which is getting it out of his space. But it's not super respectful. So, but this is one of those, it may not be the hill you want to die on. You may want to decide whether it's worth of a conversation or not. But it might be that, if you want to come and put something in my office, then you need to come with an explanation to me, and we need to talk about where it's best to go, or whether it needs to stay or not, or
Well,
do you give me permission to deal with it in whatever way I see fit after that? Or like, is he really just saying, I don't want this, I don't know if you do, I'm going to let you decide after this, and if you don't want it, it's okay for it to go out of the house? Like, if he's okay with that part of the process, like he's declaring it not in my space, therefore here it's for you because I don't want it. He's basically telling you that he doesn't want it anymore, and then he's waiting for you to pass judgment as well. Okay, that's a reasonable, but you probably should have some more conversation about it.
yeah, well, it seems, I thought of it as, here's Dawn working on a system. She's carefully crafting a system to handle the categories of stuff, and then she's getting random hand grenades thrown into it. Right. So my thought was, if you've got a general inbox and you're okay with him putting paper in your general inbox, make clear to him that paper goes here, and anything that isn't paper, don't put it on my desk.
Yeah, we have to talk about it separately.
There's this basket over here in the corner. You can, if of course, I think it would be more useful to maybe train him just a little bit to be more self-sufficient, or to ask, just to ask.
Yeah, to come and ask you about it. Yeah.
That's, my 2 cents on that.
And we don't know. We don't know how long they live together. We don't know what their agreed upon communication style is. We don't know any of that. But I would extrapolate that it's appropriate for him to come and say to you, I no longer want this item. I don't find it useful in my room. Do we still need this, or can I donate it? Like, he can still participate in the ultimate distribution of the object, and he just needs to come and have a conversation with you about whether you care about the item or not. And that would be him participating, because he's not doing that to the whole house. He's only doing the stuff that he's encountering in his spaces. And, I know that it isn't all your job to make your house be decluttered and organized, right? Like, it's his job too. Y'all both live there. And so I know that there's not always an equal distribution of work, but any way in which he can support the work that you're doing in the house would be, lovely. Let me just say that. Okay. Thank you.
Well,
thanks, Todd. You spawned great conversations around this.
And we always encourage our audience to ask for what they need.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to communicate about this topic. It can be difficult, but you can make things better by communicating clearly about it.
Right. Exactly.
BB reports, for the Weekly Tittle, I couldn't think of a way to undo a knot in my decluttering life. I guess I'm in good company with the many people who tried to undo the knot before Alexander and couldn't figure it out.
Yeah, there you go, right? You're just part of the team.
But
well,
don't give
and
up.
that's why you're here, right? That's why you're here, to learn ways that you can tackle stuff. So hopefully we can support you in that.
Connie says, I have too many knots.
We all have a collection, right? Well, so pick the easiest one and start working on that one.
Brenda says, I cleared off chair and bedroom. Cat can now have his own bed again.
Oh, woohoo! That's exciting. Clearing off the bed is a good one though, because I think that having stuff be on the bed with you is really way more disruptive than you realize in terms of your sleep, and getting good sleep and not being distracted and not being aggravated by the stuff that's you're sleeping with. So good for you to clean it off.
Rowan reports 70 books packed away.
Oh
So
my
I
goodness,
so
that's
I
a
can
lot.
concentrate on the three I am reading at this time.
Very good. That's amazing. That's a lot. That's a collection, right? So that's, I'm sure that made a lot of space for you once you packed that away. I'm sure that cleared up some space. Good job.
Here's a really good one from M. M says, I sorted through the emotions involved with a troublesome tax refund.
Ooh.
One, quiet music. Two, work at time of day when I am not tired.
Mm.
Three, fill out just one line at a time, more if not too stressful, allowing breaks. Four, breaks are of constructive work, like simple housework, that result in a boost from accomplishment. Result, calm, optimistic, almost ready to turn in.
I'm so proud of you. That is really, you really knocked it out of the park there. I mean, you're describing taking care of yourself around it. You're describing doing it in steps and stages that made it um, something that you could tackle comfortably and without being too distressed. And here you are at the end. You were doing other constructive things in between. You were giving yourself rest breaks. You were doing it when you were in an optimal place to be focusing on it. I really, really, that was a great description of taking care of yourself around. I have to do this project. Therefore, the best way to do it to support myself is with music when I'm, the most rested, taking regular breaks, only doing a piece at a time. Like you did all these things to take care of yourself. And I'm super proud of you. And now you're about ready to be done. That's awesome. Congratulations.
On the subject of Dawn's aforementioned desk, Rowan says, being married is even more important to have separately controlled spaces and that be respected.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I agree with that. I think that was
Very valid point.
that was what Dawn's description triggered for me was her husband doesn't take the nature of her desk seriously enough. That was what I was getting was
Mm,
there is a little failure of respect there,
mm-hmm.
putting something that's clearly not hers to process while doing desk work,
Yeah, yeah. It's
putting
it's
it into
another
that
kind of an
space.
object. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And like I said, we don't know what prearrangements they have around that. I don't want to act like they didn't already negotiate that that's acceptable, but
right.
but yeah, but we're having our own responses to it. And I think Rowan's point is valid that everybody in a household needs to have spaces that they're responsible for, and everyone, you know, is in charge of their own items, right? And has their own ownership. And so respecting that each of us has our own things and each of us wants to manage and navigate our own things ourselves and not have it be done for us or without our consent or is important. It's an important respect thing that we all have our own things in our own spaces, and the shared spaces need to be negotiated continuously and in a respectful manner. And so I think it's a very valid point for everybody that shares a space. Everybody needs some of their own space, and you need collective bargaining around the shared spaces.
okay, one more tittle report and then we'll
Okay.
move on.
Okay.
Maureen says was able to get started in basement and now there's a
Oh,
path and many items gone to the trash.
great job. That's an exciting thing. I know that basement was, it was a big mountain to climb to get started. And so good on you. I'm proud of you for getting going. And, the basement is out of the way, right? So you don't have to get it all done in one hit. And if you've plowed a path and taken a bunch of stuff to trash, you're, already clearing space and you can just keep going down there until you're happy with the end of it. Good job.
Okay, I think we should move on.
Okay.
We've got a lot to talk about on our main topic today.
Yes, we do.
An impending move sharpens the urgency of eliminating stuff you no longer use, want, or need. Would you rather purge through careful, calm decisions or in a panic state because you run out of time and energy to pack? Today, we're going to offer tips to optimize planning, packing, and moving your household, and also suggest ways to leverage moving strategies to declutter even if you're staying put.
Moving is such a disruptive process. And most of us really balk at the prospect of having to pack everything in our lives, transport it all, and unpack it somewhere new. If ever there was a project we all want to procrastinate on, it's packing up a home's worth of stuff. The problem with letting procrastination win on a move project is that you're the one who will suffer because you're moving no matter whether you're prepared or not. If you're not prepared, then the mad scramble to get everything in a container and moved becomes such an exhausting and craze-inducing job where you'll end up exhausted and possibly hurt from overwork. So even though we'd all rather pretend the move isn't going to happen and it isn't going to take 2 months of nonstop preparation to do it, it's better to face the reality of it and help yourself in the process. I'm talking to myself here because I'm about to move and I'm not best pleased about it. My landlord just raised my rent 30%. And so instead of moving being my plan for a happy change in my life, it's caused by someone else's actions. I'm about to be my own client again, using my move strategies on my own move, and you'll be along for the ride. So let's start by giving you and myself some of my best move advice. The number one tip I give everyone is starting way sooner than you think you need to start. It takes lots of time to declutter and donate what you don't want to move with you. And if you try to do it close to the move date, it interferes with packing and you can't really get through everything. So decluttering strategy number one is to start decluttering right now, period. I've been in this house for 10 years now, and I know how many places need decluttering. Even an organizer accumulates things that don't need to stay. So decluttering is all about opening up space and reducing volume of things to be packed, removing trash and recycling, and putting like things with like for future packing. You can think of it as a whole house reset. You're putting everything back where it belongs. So all the like items get packed together and you have a clear idea of the total volume you have of any collections. It helps with donation decisions too. While actual packing is pretty disruptive since it creates piles of boxes and prevents you accessing what's packed until after the move, decluttering is less so because you're focusing on subtracting what doesn't need to move, but leaving everything else in place basically. So you can still get to stuff while you're doing this part, which is helpful, and it feels less destructive. If you do this decluttering part early on, you can start packing a few weeks before the move and probably manage to get it completely ready for the movers, which would be a wonderful outcome for you. So let's talk some decluttering strategies, which is the hardest part of the job, I think, for everyone. The first thing you should look at is all of the furniture in every room. You've been adding things into the house over time, but furniture hardly ever goes out at the same rate. It comes in, but it's not quickly going back out. So don't move it just because you own it or because you inherited it. A move is a perfect time to set something free that you don't really love and doesn't fit in the new place because of its size. If it's not your style or doesn't fit in the new floor plan or has seen better days and needs replacing anyway, don't move it. Find a way to donate it through the local furniture bank, a refugee or disaster relief program, or at the curb on heavy trash weekend. Then post a photo of what's at the curb on your neighborhood message board and say, come and pick it up for free. Ask your family or your friends if anyone that you know can use it. Whatever you need to do to remove a piece of furniture that should be left behind. It takes time to arrange pickup things like that, so this is a good thing to start with. And the bonus is that if you remove some furniture, it immediately frees up some space in the house, so your sorting and packing are easier because you have more room. I'm trying to think of, whether I have furniture that needs to go, and I am thinking that I probably do have some things that are ready to be retired at this point. So that's my number one project to tackle as well.
We also have a move probably about, well, it's going to be about 10 months off. I think our lease is up in 10 months. or so. And Jaime's gotten a real jump on the getting rid of stuff that he, doesn't want to move with us. He's even actually, since we have so little space in this house, he's even packed up things that he looks forward to using in the next place. And so we're using some of the more recent stuff we've bought instead of our favorites, because the favorites are already packed.
Right. That's good. All right. So the next project that you need to tackle is paperwork, especially that old file cabinet in the back of the office somewhere that's full of who knows what. It's time to find all of the old paper files, the stashes of paper, the boxes of paper in random closets, and check them for the move value. Is it worth it to move this pile of paper? Or is it all really old, dated, and unimportant? Boxes of paper stuff are heavy. It takes a lot of effort to move them. So don't do it if you can filter it out to something less. Think of your poor back lifting that box, or your poor mover's back. Even if you can't figure out how to deal with the paperwork that you want to keep, now's not the time to stress about adding filing systems. Remember, at this point, it's all about removal, reduction, trashing, or recycling. So go through the paper in the house, doing step 1 of every paper sorting project. What here can go out of the house forever? Don't pack paper that you'll throw out on the other end. Spend some time making at least one pass through the paper, looking to reduce it. And I will say, for me, this is not really a problem. I'm on top of my paper and I don't have any stashes that need reducing, thank goodness. So it's just a matter of making sure that everything that I've kept has actually gotten into the file it's supposed to be in. And then that's sort of the end of my paper project.
I wish I could say the same. I have too much in this category, so
You
I
do?
need to. Yeah, I do.
I don't think of you as saving paper because you converted to so much online.
I have, but there are always the things that either they don't offer, there's no online option, or other people just like invoices from vendors and things like that I need to
You need for tax
make
purposes.
pay, and I need to make them paperless to get rid of them.
Mm.
And then fiddly little tax things, there's a lot of that. And
Yeah.
receipts, I always, the receipts pile up, and I just have to periodically grab a heap and go through and throw all the ones that I will never need to see again and figure out what has to be scanned and kept.
Yeah. So I do that more in real time.
Yeah, I'm not great at that.
I'm much more about opening the mail as it comes, and here's a folder that I park the business paperwork, and here's a folder where I park the personal paperwork, and it sits there and collects for the year. And I keep other kinds of paper, but paper that's related to spending money. And then I need to be able to track for my business goes in one bucket, and I track it personally in another bucket. And when it's tax time, I go through and start throwing stuff out of the personal bucket because I really don't need all that for tax support. And so I have systems around paper that work for me, thank goodness. And I'm not intimidated by paper just by the nature of what I did for a living before. So being a CPA, I don't have the same reaction that other people do to paper, thank goodness.
Yeah.
I'm blessed in that way. Thank the Lord for that. Okay, so let's go to the linen closet next. It's time to sort through all those sheets and blankets and tell the truth to yourself about how many beds you have and how many linens you really need. I promise it's not as much as you have. Subtract all those old sets with dead elastics and with stains, and those sets that are for beds you no longer own, because you used to have a full bed, but now you don't. Or you used to have twin beds for the kids, but now you don't. So all those sheets need to go. Do the same for all those blankets and the bedspreads and throws and duvets and quilts and comforters you have, because you got a million of them. And you're not having a sleepover anytime soon. You do not need to have blankets for 17 people being in the house, because there ain't going to be 17 people in your house. Time to release some bed coverings. All this stuff can be donated to a pet shelter or vet's office. So go through your linens collection and then make the errand happen. It'll leave a big space in the closet, I promise. Next, go to any room that you consider a junk room or a spare room or a guest room. This is any room that has stuff in it, but hardly ever gets used. This is basically your in-house storage unit. Almost everything in here is old, unnoticed, and not currently in use in your life. It's a ripe population for donations. It's probably got some sentimental things hiding in there, but all the more reason for facing them and deciding if they really need to be moved again. I'll bet you'll find some unpacked boxes from the last move in there somewhere as well. It's time to open them up and donate the contents if possible, because clearly you haven't needed them so far. This room and its closet will probably take some time to go through, but since it's a room that you don't use, it's okay to disturb it and not finish it all at once. You can start the project and walk out of the room when you're a quarter of the way through and go about your life and come back another day. It'll all be sitting there because it's not really part of your daily active life. Just make sure you touch everything here and be extra sure that it needs to move. If it doesn't, then it's time to drag it out of the house. You'll likely need a few trips to complete this. And I don't have a junk room, but instead I have some stashes of things that I put away and ignored. So for me, it's going to be time to filter everywhere in my house that has hidden stashes and clear them out. And I'm particularly thinking of, there's some cabinets in my office. There's a second closet in the master bedroom that has stuff that I haven't dealt with, they went in the move and hasn't come out. There's a cabinet in the kitchen that some stuff went in that hasn't come out. I think that the garage, don't even get me started on the garage. So I do have spaces that need decluttering. They're just not whole rooms. They're smaller spaces. So I have my work cut out for me as well.
Did Penny thoroughly declutter the kitchen before she left?
She did, because she's the cook.
Right.
And she sort of went, okay, Gayle probably needs that. And then she took all the other stuff away. All the specialty kitchen gear was hers to begin with.
Right.
And, I have a basic set of things that I use. And there's still things in the kitchen. It's like, come on, I don't need that. Like, there are things I know that are going to go even in the move, because like I am the most basic person in the kitchen. And I hardly I barely use the stuff that's in there. So until and unless I live with somebody who cooks again, my kitchen is going to be nothing. It's going to have practically nothing in it. I use the same things over and over, and that's the end of it. So the next one is any closet in any room needs the same kind of once over that I talked about for whatever your junk or guest or spare room is. Closets are where things are hidden and get stuffed to get them out of the way. So now is the time to unpack those closets and find all the things that you've stashed in there. So much to be donated is buried in your closets right now. And it's not just about clothes and shoes. There's always other things on the floor and on the shelves. So it's really time to start digging. Either find the hidden important treasures or find the junk that you no longer need. And I know specifically, the list that I made before, there's specifically things that need to go out. I do have 2 closets that are practically empty. So my volume is probably not as big as other people, but I definitely have things that need to go. That's what happens when you live someplace for 10 years. Things just, they accumulate some. Tackle any pantry space. This is an important one to declutter in advance of a move. There's no need to pay movers to move cans of food that can be replaced on the other end for less than $1 a piece. This is a 2-pronged strategy. So stop restocking the pantry of staples and start eating what you have, so you don't need to move it. And you can go shopping once you're in the new place, which is infinitely cheaper to restock than to pack and pay the movers to move food stuff. So make it a game to get your pantry to its lowest level ever before the move day comes. Don't forget to donate food you bought that you don't like, or to throw out the expired food or the food that you tried but will never cook again. And then treat the fridge and the freezer the same way. Try your best to empty it by consuming the contents and not rebuying until after the move is done. Moving fridge food is a hassle. There aren't enough coolers in the world when your fridge is full. And it's such a standing at the fridge that's full and pulling all of it down into a cooler or 2 or 3 or 7, and then trying to get it all to the other end, not dead, not toxic, not ruined, and then unpacking it on the other end. It's like, oh God. So this is a place where making it a game to get it down to the thinnest amount possible is the best thing you can do for yourself, because you can go to the store and you can buy new stuff and you don't want to load up and then pay the movers their price to pack it or to move it. And then you have to load a box, unload a box at the other end. Like, there's all this work around the pantry, and it's so much easier to just go to the grocery store and buy new food. and so eat up what you've got, make use of what you've got, thin that herd down to the smallest amount, and then, restock how you wish on the other end, and don't pay the movers to take groceries that you can very quickly take from the grocery store. The last space that I'm going to suggest needs attention is any cabinets, but especially like kitchen cabinets. Cabinets seem to invite being stuffed. It's time to empty them one at a time and see if you actually need and use everything that's stuffed in there. Because the fact that it's a cabinet with a door in the front means you're using it as a hidey hole, and because you don't want to see the stuff, and so you're shoving it in there to hide it. So we want to open it up and see it all, and remind yourself what you've been hiding from yourself, and find out if all that stuff really needs to be moved or not. Because probably the answer is no. Like 50% of it can just be sent off to someone new, because you shoved it in the cabinet so you wouldn't have to decide. So now's the time to decide. Empty those cabinets and see what needs to come out. Kitchen cabinets, bathroom cabinets, and like I said, office cabinets in my office. You've been putting things in there you didn't want to make a decision about keeping, so it's time to face the music and finally decide, why exactly am I keeping this again? What was the purpose of stashing it in here? What do I think I'll do with it? Why can't it go away instead? Why can't it just be done? So filter all of your cabinets with that in mind and try to reduce it down to what you actually use. You want to take a comment pause before I shift to packing?
Yeah, let's get a couple comments in. Bella says, tips on not feeling bad that we moved items that I end up giving away after seeing it doesn't fit the space and still need to declutter.
That's okay. I mean, if you think about it, there's some things that are obvious that won't. You have an old space and you have a new space. Once you know what the new space is, and you know how big the rooms are, and who's going to go where and that kind of stuff, you can generally figure out about the big furniture,
right?
The big pieces of furniture. That bed will fit in there. That bed will fit in there. This cabinet can go in this room. Like, you'll make some decisions about the big pieces, and it'll be sort of obvious that some things do or don't work. But there's a certain amount of, unless you're an interior designer or you do a lot of furniture layout planning in advance, there's a certain amount of, you got to get in there and see how it works and try it and see if you like it. And so there's some flexibility there,
especially, small tables, small cabinets. It's easy to say, there might be a place for this.
I might need that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there is a certain amount of, you have to be in the new home and get used to how those places laid out and figure out where, in unpacking everything and putting things away. And then you can make a more informed, better decision, right, about whether an item really works or not. And so don't give yourself a hard time about that. Like, some of it came and you may or may not have had a plan for it, and maybe the plan didn't work, or maybe you didn't think about it and thought you'd just work it out somewhere, but it turns out that it doesn't actually work. It's like, okay, that's all right. It's very hard to 100% plan where everything is going to go in a new house without some failures in the plan. Like, it looks right on paper, but then when you actually get it in there, it doesn't feel or work the way that you thought it would. And so even with a plan for everything, still sometimes it doesn't work out that way in real life. And so plan as much as you can plan, filter out what absolutely won't work, and then go about the business of dealing with what's there and making further, aesthetic and functionality decisions as you unpack and set up the new house. And just consider that part of the setting up of the new house process. It's part of settling in and being there and feeling what it's like to live in the space. And so, yeah, don't give yourself a hard time about that. You're just, you're just setting up your house. That's all.
Well,
No big deal.
and in planning for a future move, you can maybe start tagging things with could go, here's where I'm thinking this will go. And
Mm,
then when you're putting, yellow stickies on things that might go in the bedroom, and you're putting blue stickies on things that you think will be in the living room, pay attention to how many of those you're accumulating.
mm-hmm.
And you want to make sure that you're not, you don't have, I don't know, I'm just going to pull a number out of the air. You don't want the number of items, of furniture items that there may be a place for to be 20 more than 20% of the stuff,
Right.
maybe
Exactly.
even 10 would be a better number.
Right.
You just don't want it to creep up toward 50% of your furniture is in the category of there might be a place for this.
Right.
That's when you might be in some kind of trouble.
Right. And just because it functioned in your current space doesn't mean that item will function in a new space. And there's some that you won't know the answer until you get there. And so it's okay to take some things and try. But if you're going from a bigger place to a smaller place and you have a lot of oversized furniture, it's likely that most of that furniture won't translate well because it'll choke up a smaller space. So keep that in mind. You may have to take all the old furniture and let it go that's too big, all the big pieces, and buy more size appropriate pieces for the new space. So there may be, it just depends on what the shift looks like in your life from old to new space, how much work you have to do with the furniture and the objects, the larger objects that are coming to the house, all the lamps, all the tables, all the bookshelves, all the containers, blah, blah, blah.
Samudra says, I'm constantly letting go of one thing at a time. The problem is getting rid of them because not that mobile.
So we got to find you a pickup and a distribution solution, right? One might be that you make a collection and then call a TaskRabbit person and pay for an hour of their time to come and pick up stuff and take it to Goodwill.
And since it's Samudra we're talking about, I know she can come up with a beautiful and creative temporary storage solution where the things go that are on their way out and not yet gone.
Not
right?
yet gone. Exactly. Our little artist Samudra is going to make it pretty, right?
Deborah says, I've set up weekly meetings with a friend for body doubling. She's writing a book, and I have a variety of paper projects. We
Ooh,
work
good.
with the kitchen timer. Then and by we, I mean she, cook dinner and drink wine. We both slowly work ahead on our projects. I used to be amazing with paper, and since surgery 18 months ago, plus changing jobs and having my residency visa and its dozens of papers, which each of these things entail, come due in between, I am far behind. I think I may have skipped over a word in there. Sorry about that. The brain fog set me back. It makes me convinced that working hard on things beforehand is vital for the complicated times.
It's very, very true. And, give yourself a little grace around this. If you're recovering and you're not at your fullest capacity, the fact that you're taking a little bit longer than you would perhaps like, it doesn't matter. You're still conscientiously working on it. And I love that you've set up a body double process with someone so that you guys are sitting with each other to do the projects and making dedicated time, and everybody's making headway on it. And so that's really supportive of yourself, and keeping each other on task that way, and everybody's working on the same kind of stuff together. And so it really helps you commit to a certain amount of time to work on the project, and you're doing it at a time slot that works for you and hopefully isn't too tiring for you right now. And you'll eventually get there. And in the meantime, you're having dinner and wine with your friend. Like, how
Nice.
you get an immediate reward after you work, so that's got to be awesome. I like that plan. Good for you.
Ginger Ginger commented on pantry. She says, I'm ready to purge it again. Time to get real. We are in a different stage of life. We're not eating or cooking the way we did before life changes.
Mm,
I would bet that there are a lot of people out there who changed their habits for the pandemic, and the pantry was probably one of the places that got radically altered.
yeah,
And maybe they've shifted back to how they lived before, or maybe they've only shifted part of the way back to how they lived before, but probably still worth a look in there to make sure you're not, keeping stuff around that just isn't part of your life,
yeah,
your
exactly.
cooking and eating lifestyle anymore.
Well, and for me, there's things that Penny knew how to cook that I don't
Right.
know how to cook. So there's things in the pantry that I'm like, what do you do with that? I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what to do with that. So, there's things that need to come out and go into the Houston Food Bank, that I need to be able to donate for someone else to cook because it's more sophisticated than I would even begin to know how to use. And so there's definitely things in the pantry that are going to go away now because, the cook is not here to cook them. So from that standpoint, I don't have a lot of food in my pantry. My pantry isn't overstuffed. It never was, but there are things in there that I shouldn't be taking with me because I am never going to use them. And so they need to go. I don't need to be packing them and unpacking them and stashing them and I'm thinking of my spice rack. Like I have this spice rack that with the pull out drawers, and then a whole nother basket besides. And that was all Penny accumulating spices. And I'm like, I'm never going to use all that. That is not happening. Like, so they're open. So I'm not sure I'm like trying to come up with a way to donate those spices away.
You
Um,
should you should
because they're not
you should
sealed,
invite my brother-in-law to come over and take a spin through.
What a great job. What a great idea. I will immediately do that. Absolutely. That's absolutely, yeah, you're right. That's it. He's the
Just
man. He's the cook.
put a little tag on top that says
Hello.
free to a good home, and let him go through it.
Bob, do you want any of these? Here.
Well,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
also a knowledgeable enough cook that he will recognize what is not worth saving at all.
Yes, exactly.
And
That's a great idea. Thank you so much. I love that idea.
uh,
See, I
Na-
need cooks in my life.
Naomi says, if you're moving far enough that transportation costs are significant, get rid of everything mass produced that would be cheaper to rebuy than to ship. E-
Yes.
even
Oh
if
my
you just
gosh.
even if you just dump it at the curb, you've saved money.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, Connie cautioned, she said, I tend to agree, but not ecological. But you can make it as ecological as possible by donating where possible, and if you're dumping it at the curb, dump it at the curb on a clear, dry day when someone can come along and take it while it's still useful before it gets rained on.
Yeah, yeah. And you can, take that picture and post it in your neighborhood group. Everybody has an online neighborhood group now that they can belong to of some kind. And you can post it on the group and say, free to a good home, come poach my driveway and let people come by and take it. And then you will save money because you're not buying as many boxes to pack and you're not paying as many hours for those boxes to be loaded and unloaded. And the box count on the move, the cost of the box count is less because you're moving less boxes. And so you will be saving money on the move. And then, that can be translated to you can replace some things and you don't have to replace them all at once, right? Like you can replace them slowly over time on the other end as you determine that you need them. And so, yeah, it's a good way to filter. Do I really need to pack this up? Does I really need to go? And so maybe not. It maybe can go at the curb and let somebody else use it, and then you can refresh on the other end.
Okay, let's
Okay.
go on to let's talk about packing before we run out of time.
Okay. So for a local move, the items are going to stay in the moving truck for some hours, maybe, and they're going to travel for something less than 50 miles. For my last move, for instance, my items traveled less than 10 miles. So that minimizes the time something can bounce and break in the truck. But for a longer move to another city or state, your items will be in a truck for days. They also may be transferred to more than one truck. If you use one of those large van lines like Allied or Mayflower, right? They're all big national cross-country chains. And so they pick up your stuff in one truck that is more sort of neighborhood sized. And then they take those trucks to somewhere else and offload them into a larger semi truck that's going to go across the country with 5 families' contents in the truck. And so they get moved in and out of trucks, and then they're offloaded out of the big truck and put in another truck for final delivery. And so there's a constant transferring happening, and it makes it harder to, I mean, it adds time, and it makes more road time, where the road, it's going down the road being bounced, it's being manhandled a lot more. And so any kind of a traveling from one city to another state, across country, your items are going to be much more, they're going to be handled more, and they're going to be exposed to potential damage for longer periods of time. And so you need to pack with that in mind and increase the packing material for breakable things against that long-term bouncing and mishandling. I mean, if you think when you're driving down the highway and you go along and there's like bumps in the road, and you go, if you've ever been in an SUV where that had things in the back, and then you go over, like maybe there's a speed bump, and you go over the speed bump and the back of the car goes foot chunk, right? And all this stuff bounces up and down. Imagine that happening in a semi truck, that, the items don't just stay perfectly in place the whole drive because they're in a moving vehicle. So they're going, like, they don't fall over, they get strapped against, completely falling down, and they get packed against that as well. But there is still this amount of jumpy motion that is happening as they travel along the roads and go over barriers and hit cracks in the road and whatever. And so going on up and down driveways and in and out of parking spaces, and it's all going to affect the contents of your boxes. So you got to pack with that in mind. So here's my quick boxing tips. Use the smallest size moving boxes for most things. And I would say that when I help people pack, 90% of what gets packed goes into the smallest moving box, the smallest size. It's easier for the movers to stack those on a dolly and roll 3 or 4 of them out at once. And also for you to unpack on the other end. Those big, huge boxes sometimes get filled, and then the mover puts them one large box and another large box on top of it. And then you're in the new house with a large box that's basically over your head, and you can't get it down on the floor, and you can't get into it. And when you get into it, you have to bend over at the waist to touch the bottom of the box. And it's like, those boxes are hard to maneuver for the average person. And so smaller boxes are better, and use them for most things. Don't pack a box to a very heavy weight. That means that it's more likely that you're going to get hurt messing with it. The mover might get hurt messing with it. And if it gets stacked and falls on something, it's going to crush something lighter underneath it. And so anything that you can do to manage the weight in the box would be a good thing. And it'll help everybody along the way. And it'll also help your items in transits, where that very heavy box may or may not, be sitting on top of a bunch of boxes below it that are lighter because of how they pack it in the truck. And so you don't want a box that's super heavy, slowly crushing the boxes below it while it gets transported. And imagine the bouncing happening with the heavy weight on the top or in the middle, and that heavy weight just chunking the boxes down below it over more and more every time it hits something. Make sure that you buy a specialty TV moving boxes for your TV or your artwork. They make skinny, 4 inches across. One inserts to another slots, long, narrow, shaped like the flat screen TV. So it's better to have a box designed for that shape. And those also work very well for artwork. So specialty moving boxes are more expensive, of course, but I think for TV and artwork, it's worth it to have those narrow boxes. The farther the move is going to be, the more cushioning you should have in the boxes. I just said that. Tape across the seam of the box. You fold the flaps together and you tape across the seam. I do that a couple of times, but then I also do it at 90-degree angles, because what happens when there's a lot of weight in the box, you have that seam and the tape that's going along it, but the weight pushes, that's the weak point of the box. The weight pushes against that seam. And sometimes the tape that's just along the seam isn't enough to keep the seams from splitting open if there's too much weight in there. So I do a one at 9 degrees that goes across the seam at 9 degrees to the seam, so that when there's pressure against the box, against the seam from the weight or the contents of the box, that cross tape is helping hold the seam together. And so then you won't have things busting out the bottom because there's too much weight against that seam and the tape on the seam. Larger boxes are for larger kitchen appliances and for linens and for odd shaped items. It's very easy to overstuff a large size box, but there's also lots of, you can get a medium size. Most kitchen appliances will fit into a medium size box. There's lots of kitchen appliances that are too big for a regular small moving box. The mix master comes to mind,
mixer, yeah.
The rice cooker, the toaster oven, those kinds of things are going to be too large for most small moving boxes, but they'll fit in medium ones. You just don't want to put 50 pounds or 60 pounds of kitchen gear in one medium moving box. So I would, put one heavy item in there and then put a bunch of other lightweight things in there to manage the weight of that box. Anything fragile needs cushioning on all 6 sides of the box, in addition to really careful wrapping, because everything bounces as you move along, and you hope that the box stays upright. But at the very least, they're going to stack boxes on a dolly. They're going to tilt the dolly at 90, 45-degree angle, and everything's going to be slanted on the dolly. And then they're going to do it in reverse on the other end. And so those boxes are not going to 100% stay upright the whole time. And if, God forbid, anybody drops one of those boxes, or the box gets, tumbled around on the floor a little bit, you don't know which side's going to be up. So you want cushioning everywhere. That's what I'm saying. If it's super important to you and it's fragile, you definitely want cushioning on all sides. I will add one more thing about that. Don't stack the plates flat, because that just is a bunch of weight that is now going to bounce like this in the truck, even with wrapping around it. And so what happens is the plates on the bottom take the brunt of that bouncing, and then they end up breaking in the bottom. So dishes should be packed on their side, up on their edge, so that the bouncing is only happening with one plate's weight at a time. And if it's properly cushioned and wrapped, it should survive just fine in that state. Okay, that's my packing tips. We got to move on.
Yes, we do. We are just about out of time. Let's talk about next week. We are actually taking next week off because Gayle is going to a NAPO board meeting, right? Are you going anywhere fun?
Minneapolis. That's where our headquarters is. The management company that manages our headquarters is in Minneapolis. So we're going there.
Minneapolis is cool. I went there once for a chorus convention that was great fun.
Right?
Very nice downtown.
That's where we'll be next week.
Excellent. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. That is Tuesday, June 11th at noon U.S. Central Time. We haven't picked out a topic yet, but watch your email for an announcement of that. Gayle, why don't you give us the weekly tittle?
Okay, the weekly tittle is called Your Moving Challenge. This week's assignment is to take action to address your biggest prospective moving roadblock, whether or not you're actively planning your next move. Start by answering the following question. Considering the present condition of your space and its contents, if you had to move from your home in a short time frame, what would your greatest challenge be? Your trouble spot might be a category of stuff, an item of furniture, an overstuffed closet, a jam-packed room, a collection of things, a physical limitation or a time constraint, or any other moving hurdle that comes to mind. Jot down ideas about how you might face the challenge. Here are a few questions to get you started. Who would help you? Friends or family, social service agencies, church groups, volunteer organizations, paid help, etc. What task could you knock out far in advance of a move? And what are you ready to give away, donate, recycle, or dispose of right now? Plan 1 or 2 next actions you can take now to start clearing your roadblock, and then schedule an appointment to work on the project. If you're not moving, just think of it as some move prep for sometime in the future.
Right. Or move prep for the person who has to move your belongings out of your house
later,
someday.
in the future. Exactly. And you know, decluttering only improves your environment. So if you think of it as a move project and you get some more stuff out of the house, more is the better. And then come back and tell us how it went.
If you're watching this on YouTube, we would love for you to join us live. To get notifications about upcoming events, we invite you to join the meetup group by visiting cfhou.com/meetup. You can also follow us on Facebook by visiting cfhou.com/Facebook or join our mailing list by going to cfhou.com/subscribe. We love to hear from you, so please keep your questions, comments, and topic suggestions coming on YouTube, Facebook, or anywhere that you find us. You can always reach us through our website at clutterfairyhouston.com.
That's us. Thank you for coming. I want to say, just a reminder, if you like the videos, please like them on YouTube. If you watch them there, if you're liking in the podcast, we'd appreciate any kind of review you want to put out there. We love to hear from you, and we appreciate the feedback and that you join us every week to play with us talking about organizing. So we'll be back here in 2 weeks while I go do some NAPO work next week, and we'll see you then. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.